All right, I'm
Man,
on.
how are you? Hey, I'm on. It's good to see you. Welcome back to another OTXNT. How's your coffee? What are you drinking?
I'm drinking coffee that I started this morning, and it's still as good as it was. The Folgers in my cup.
I have nothing in my Roswell, New Mexico alien cup. So that's sad. I wanted to. Today's just got past. That's got your name on it. Look at that.
It was a
Is that a
gift. Yeah.
very cool? Well, hey, so before we get started, let me just introduce what we're talking about today. I have, just being in the church, you get people asking questions all the time. I had a question that was posed to me, and I know people are thinking about it because this is hitting the internet as well. But I actually was just listening some of the news yesterday, and it was kind of what's happening with Disney right now. And so, if you don't know, we'll get there. We'll kind of bring you up to speed. But I had a question that was posed to me about: is it time for Christians to be boycotting Disney? And so, I think it'll be interesting because we have to talk about that. There was a time when we did, and what do we do? And is there maybe some theological principles or things like that we need to think through or should help us? Because I think this is going to be one of those areas where we're going to come to find ourselves at let's look at what scriptures say and then we have to determine for ourselves. I don't think we're going to be able to tell you do this or do that kind of a thing. But man, you want to open us up in prayer and then I'll jump in, kind of set the scene where we're at. But yeah, is it time to let Disney go? Let's think about that.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and pray. And actually, I have both the resolutions handy that placed a boycott on Disney and then pulled it off from the SBC, so we can kind of get some history in this. So it's kind of exciting. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Let's do
let's
it, man.
Pray. All right, so let's join me in the Lord's Prayer, if you will. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. All right, so here's the deal. It's kind of set up that we're talking about. Reason why this is in the news is there's been actually a couple things. So Pixar had a movie that came out just recently called was it Red or something like that?
Red Panda or something? Yeah,
It's the Panda. Yeah, it's the and so actually turning red. And so there's been, for me, I'm at a point already with my family, any content, I'm just like, until I've seen it, I'm not watching it. We're not letting the kids watch it. But I've heard some things already. Is that there's some little bit of controversy around it, and so there were some things that people had said that it's a little bit mature, and then some have said, is there some kind of hidden message that's going on behind it? Like I said, I haven't read it, but already that was kind of the first thing that kind of came out. The other big things that have been taking place is, so Florida had the bill that came out that the media loves to call the "Don't Say Gay" bill, but it's essentially about what you can teach to sexuality to your children up to third grade. That they wanted to kind of keep that conversation out of the classroom, and so Disney stepped in it and had said originally they were going to not talk about it, and then they started talking more and more about it. And then in Texas, there were some things that were going on to try to protect and to make it really that you couldn't do transitioning at a young age. And Disney is now coming out and now they're frustrated about that. In fact, now I'm also looking at that we're looking and seeing that I just saw an article here that's talking more about that not only are they going to kind of be more, they're wading into this more and more, but now they're looking to also, it says they said there's established an LGBTQ plus task force to look for more programming and more things that they can put into their programming. So all of that kind of being said, the question, like I said, is I got somebody that posed it to me because they want to know what do they do? Is it time to pull out of this? And so I know that a lot of people are probably thinking about. I know I've talked to people already who they haven't asked me. They've just said, hey, we've done this or we've done that. And so I just feel like, maybe it's just good for the next, 20 minutes or so for us to have this conversation of What do you need to do? What can you do? And is it time for us to do, to pull out and to be done with them? Just saying this as well as a guy, before we even get into this, I am a former Disney cast member. Used to work for Disneyland. I loved it. Does Disney have its troubles? Absolutely, it does. And so, but I, look, living in Southern California, Disney's always been a really cool place to be, and I like the parks, and I like a lot of their movies. But this is a good question about the direction they're headed now. What do you do? So here's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, let me jump in just real quick. We usually, make everything that we talk about pretty open for if you got kids listening. But I'm thinking that you may just want to. We're going to try to talk around this as much as we can, but some of this stuff may not be so kid friendly, and it's really weird to talk about Disney and have to give a disclaimer.
No,
but I thought that maybe we should throw that out there. If you got, just be aware.
If you happen to be listening to this with your 3-year-old, even more,
or even 10-year-old,
like there are some things that we're gonna, that you have to talk about. But kind of here's what I was thinking. Right, is I think we need to ask the question first and foremost, like, what might be some biblical principles to talk about from this perspective? Like should Christians be involved with? Because I think the way this usually goes, right, is one side says, we're done with Disney. We're never supporting Disney. We can't deal with Disney ever again. And then the other side is like, well, it's everybody's this way. Right. And so there's gotta be some sort of a conversation, right? Can we find something that maybe is maybe a more of a biblical, like, tell me why I should be fully one or the other. And so I don't know. I kind of want to have that theological conversation. And then I want to have a conversation about like maybe where we have been in the past or anything like that. So your initial thoughts while we're talking about this is, give me what you're at, because I'm going to go to some scripture in just a second on this.
Right. And I think, again, on the boycott issue, that's something we have to discuss. And it's one of the things I think that failed on the first boycott is just a lack of buy-in across the Southern Baptist Convention, because we lost the media battle and people loved Disney. And it was hard to even believe what you were hearing. And Disney was good at launching certain things through their affiliate networks so that their name wasn't on it. And so, but yeah, I think it was more than justified. It would have been nice if we'd had a better education bar going. And it would have been nice if, maybe the Catholic Church joined in with us on that, because for the same reasons that we would have stood against it, they could have stood too. And we could really have brought some hurt and turned the course. And we did turn the course. Yeah. That's the thing. And also I just wanted to speak to this anti-grooming bill is what some people are calling it in Florida. Because why do you need to teach sexual education to kindergartners? Especially in light of this, last week, there was a huge bust of 108 human traffickers dealing with pedophilia in Florida. And out of the 108, there were, I think, 4 Disney employees included in that and a judge. It's not as though this is abstract ideas that some of this stuff leads to mistreatment of children. And so I think that there's a direct correlation between that bust and the concern about over-sexualizing children at an early age. And so that weighs into some of this. And I think that that's part of the concern. It's not just abstract. We want people to treat each other with respect and dignity. However, when it comes to boycotting, like you said, what can you keep if you start boycotting stuff for LGBTQ reasons or for whatever purpose in today's culture? But I do think there is even a Christian conscience level to this that I think is important. And just recognizing that there were things that we used to think as neutral, and I can spend my money and maybe it's not all going to positive things, but then there's also things that you can spend your money on that is going to then target your own family's children and culture and move them in a sinful direction. And I think that's a stronger reason to maybe stand against some of these things and maybe even organize boycotting. But yeah, the big thing for me is I'm a little bit of a pragmatist. And if it's not going to work, we got a ton of bad press for the boycott in the 90s. And that stuck with us for another decade following that. And Southern Baptists, really, a lot of them are ashamed of their name because of the bad press that followed that boycott. And I think we really should stand proud about making a stand. And I mean, just let's just go into some of that. I don't know, maybe
yeah,
there were G-rated movies with subliminal sexual messages being produced in the 90s. And that stopped when the Baptists stood up and said, no more of this. And we didn't see that. We still don't even see it to that level. I mean, I had the VHSs. I could pause and put it on slow motion. And it was amazing how blatant it was. And we were subjecting 4-year-olds to these subliminal messages. And so, again, I do think there was a great effect on that boycott. And it was frightening, I think, for Disney to think that they could lose that revenue source. If Christians were united in this, you could really make a difference. But the key is you don't want to create a situation where the fear, I think, is we pull ourselves so far removed from the world that our children rebel against that later on because we're just against fun. And I think that's a fear of a lot of parents. I'll kick it back.
So here's my big issue, right? Because I think as a family, we need to be able to guard our family for what do we consume. And I think, so in the same way, like this conversation at its most basic level needs to be even about you and I, about what do we allow ourselves to watch? So like this past week, there were some 2 weeks ago, I watched some movies that were new. And I thought, man, these look like these were going to be films that were going to be ones that I was kind of excited about. And they were on for streaming. And I watch it and I realized, like, even then I'm like, I should have turned it off. Because there were certain things, it wasn't like there were things that were obvious, like that you would catch, but certain things that might've been said or something like that. And you're like, you know what, I should have just left it alone. And I should have done my due diligence like I do with my kids stuff and like watch and just make sure that like what's in these films. Right. And so I think even as Christians, you and I need to be conscious, like, what are we putting into our hearts? What are we putting into our minds? But as families, I have to be very much even more aware too, of the same kind of thing of like, what do I'm allowing into my home? And I think there's a lot of people who today don't even deal with that. You think about, we live in a generation now where parenting is give your kid a tablet and leave me alone and you guys do your thing. And I think that's what we're going to reap that at some point of what has happened by giving your kids over to the computer and the tablet. Okay. Now, the other issue that I have as a parent, so I think not only do I need to be more diligent with myself of everything I have to examine, nothing just because it's on, the Disney app now, even, does not mean anything. And so I have to treat everything. I have to, every film, I think going forward, I have to look at the reviews because I don't want that. I don't want those words used. I don't even want to think about those. Right. So there's that aspect. I want that replaying in my head. And so I need to do that. And so there is an aspect where I have to do that with my kids and you have to be thinking about that. But here's the big question. If I were to, as a dad, if I were to say, we're done with Disney because of what they're putting out now, the content that's coming out now, where do I take them? The truth is there's no other companies. Nickelodeon's got the same set of problems. They've got their same issues, the same set of garbage that they're putting out as well. There's really nothing. There's no other place right now. Yeah.
I mean, it's, there are Christian creative groups. The problem is that the expectation of films is so fast nowadays. I know Answers in Genesis, they're putting out some children's stuff. Pure Flix, if you've got young girls, maybe tween girls, they've got some good stuff. I was a little underwhelmed with what they had for young boys. But the other question, I guess, is how addicted to television are we? Now, I'll tell you, we've got Disney Plus, and I'm not sure if we're going to cut the cord or not, but I basically restrict my kids to cartoons that predate 1995. But, then if my kids disobey me, I don't necessarily have the locking mechanisms that I would like in place. And then you just got to be really, really clever on all those things. But even if you look back in the 80s and the 90s, a lot of the movies there was a lot of promiscuity, a lot of things. It was more heterosexual in orientation, but there were things that were inappropriate then that we just were more accustomed to saying, oh, that must be okay. And so, short of going straight Mennonite on this and just totally detaching, it is hard. And so, yeah, I'm like you. I pull up Common Sense Media or Plugged In, and I have to review every movie. I hear my my parents or my the kids, my parents-in-law wanting to take the kids to a movie, and I'm like, well, did we vet it? Did we vet it? Because every new movie coming to the theater is finding a way to jam some stuff in there. And I, don't necessarily want my kids exposed to some of those things.
Everything has an agenda.
And I don't want to fund it. Even Luca came out. Everybody loved Luca. Of course, Luca was praised as having a subtext that could be readily adopted by the LGBTQ community. And, they celebrated that, but it was enough below the scene that those that would have an issue with that didn't see it. But again, that's the kind of stuff, knowing that was being double played by Disney. I was reluctant to let anyone see that. So I haven't even embraced that, but that would be over the edge. And I remember preaching about Beauty and the Beast, the remake, and telling the church, you need to make a stand here, because if Disney gets away with this, it's going to blow open the gates. And
wait. Beauty and the Beast?
The remake, because they made a big deal.
One.
The new one. Yeah.
And the live action.
And all of the church, nods on Sunday, and then all their Facebook posts, because they're such Disney addicts. They're all there. And, half the people didn't know there was anything there. And, when you're an adult and you don't have young kids in the home, you don't even think about some of this because you're so desensitized to it. But Disney was testing the waters there. And they didn't even make their own community, the LMNOP community, very excited, because it was so they sold it as a big open character, and it was really not much. And so they actually risked offending a group they were trying to please, to really test the waters to see if the conservative evangelical Christians would do anything about it. And so now here we are, because we don't make very strong stands. And so we're almost speaking to a real small group of whoever's out there to say, if you actually care enough to inconvenience your family, rather than let your kids be brainwashed, it may be time to cut the cord on a lot of this stuff. And maybe you should get some board games out.
Yeah, I mean, here's the deal. It's like, it's hard, right? Because in some respect, there's a lot of good content that's on Disney.
Yeah.
And like you said, I feel like even this with my superhero movies in general, like you got to look back to a certain time frame, or at least TV shows, to a certain set of decades where you're like, they weren't putting that in your shows, right? But everything has an agenda today. But I think the hard thing about Disney is there's a ton of great content. I was watching the Swiss Family Robinson with my kids. Like, this is a good movie. It's good. And like a lot of stuff you can't find anymore. And so it puts you in a dilemma, because you're like, there's a lot of rich material. There's some great oldies that are there. And there's some good shows that are still there. But but amidst that, there's a lot of other things. So I guess my big problem with it all. Oh, here's the other piece. This is the other thing that's setting a lot of people off too, is in response to some of this too, Disney has now also said that the new Buzz Lightyear movie that they're doing will now feature a lesbian kiss. Is it in as well? That they did that to my Star Wars. It's like, why do we need this? But they're pushing this in. And so here's the deal. It's like, I think you're right. They're testing the waters, and they're putting more and more and more. And I think I don't want my kids to see heterosexual, activity in anything. I don't want them at this young age to be exposed to any sort of sex. So heterosexual, no. Homosexual, definitely not. Like, I mean, I want sex out of everything, right? I don't want them even at this stage with my young ones, like boyfriend, girlfriend stuff. Like, I don't even want that to be an issue. No. I don't want us to be thinking about it. I just want us to, why can't we just watch something? Right. And so, there's those pieces as well of like age. So, but none of that stuff is everything. I just feel like you got to preview at this point, and you've got to watch. You can't say, let's watch it together. I have to watch it before. And so,
and then you've got to have time. You've got to have time as a parent to watch a movie twice.
Yeah.
If you want to watch it as a family, and that is, it is a real drain on your time. And
So that's one thing, right? Is you've got to make a decision. And I think there's a moral decision you have to make of what do I put in front of my kids? And I think if you have no filters, then you're doing a disservice to your family. You've let the guard down. So if you don't preview things, if you don't have control over what your kids can and can't watch, if you're just blindly giving them the remote, and I would say YouTube is if people just let their kids get on YouTube, even though it says kids, you're in a dangerous zone there. You've got to be careful on that. There's the other side, which is this, okay, is my money. Because one issue deals with morality of what do I consume, and is that okay to do that? The other is, can I still keep the app? Let's say I'm diligent at wanting to filter everything, and we will only watch things that we know fit our values, and the stuff that doesn't have all this, anything sex related, anything like that. Should I still be giving my money to Disney?
Yeah.
Should I, knowing that this is what they want to do, that they want to now put this behind everything, they want to protest when states have decided that this is what they'd like to do, which, by the way, Disney has no problem with slave camps in China. But they definitely have they have problems when states have said, hey, we want to we want to try to do something different about how we raise our kids. Right. Doesn't matter the slave kids of China, but for us in America, no, we're going to make a stand there. So brave.
Yeah. Well, in light of that, there's a real strong possibility that this video doesn't get very far before it's flagged and warnings placed on it, because we're not buying into the accepted narrative on this stuff. We'll see,
if it's not here on YouTube, it'll probably still be on the podcast though.
Yeah.
Put it on Rumble.
And I stick it on Rumble too. So that's the thing is, but just recognize that the agenda is not about, hey, we need to let, there's no personal freedom and difference of opinions, but the wrath of God is revealed against unrighteousness and ungodliness of men. And scripture is very clear on these things. And so we as parents and as Christians, we need to quit believing in the myth of neutrality. There's an agenda, and groups that are selling themselves as family friendly can't define what a family is anymore. So what we have to do basically is take the bull by the horns and just think about what did families do in the 1920s? How did they somehow survive? The movies would come out in so rarely, and you had to have the crank and a soundtrack attached to it. And so, somehow the world worked. And maybe if you decided to, I think tablets are really dangerous. We have tablets. It bothers me. I was the kid that would tell on my older siblings for watching stuff that they shouldn't watch. I was the baby, so that was my job.
Yeah.
Nowadays, everyone's on their own device around the couch. No interaction, no shared entertainment. There's no, it's completely individualized. And unless I go look around and see what they're into, if someone has got a desire to go a direction or look for something, chances are I'm not going to catch it until it's too late. And most of the filtering stuff is just not strong. So, I'd be really, really careful with the tablets and the things like that. My kids are an age that I have a general trust with them, but I'm watching my 12-year-old's getting up there. So,
yeah.
I don't want curiosity to bring something in that I can't undo. Eventually it's going to happen because of where we live. But if you're happy, and this goes back a little bit too, were we pleased with 1990s Christianity? And is that what our goal is to restore 1990s Christianity? What was the divorce rate then? The promiscuity, the over-sexualization of children has been an absolute disaster since the 60s and 70s. And we are continuing to go more progressive in our culture towards a direction we don't know what it will yield. So perhaps what we need to do is actually back up the door and say, no more. And that would go with the adults too. Why is it okay for you to watch what trash NBC has put out? But then the kids have to be restricted. What are you filling your minds with? If Jesus was in the room, would you be watching Grey's Anatomy? These are adults need to do a little soul check here and say, I need to really go a different direction. Men, I hear it, men. Oh, did you see the Game of Thrones? What business do you have, men, watching Game of Thrones? I think the Bible says something about not uncovering the nakedness of another, right? At some point in time, we have to say, as adults, am I holding a standard that I'm hoping my kids will follow when we bring all kinds of garbage into our own lives? And that's not even talking about issues with pornography, or those types of things. And so, I mean, it opens a door. And here, let me just read this. This was the end of the boycott. And Disney basically said, we recognize that boycotts are not effective if they go on forever. So we're going to end it, but we're going to say this. We pledge to continue to monitor the products and policies of Disney, the Disney company, and be it finally resolved that we urge Southern Baptists to practice continued discernment regarding all entertainment products from all sources.
Yeah.
And that has where we've stood since 2005. It wasn't like green light, enjoy. It was use your discernment. And that's a spiritual gift.
Yeah.
To prayerfully consider. So I would say that's where we should leave it. There's no mandate from outside, but hopefully you're hearing the warning. This is a serious issue.
So here's the thing. I think here's what we need to do is I think the second parter of this has to be, what do I do with my finances with this? Because I think inevitably the next question is, can I still support a company that does it? So we'll talk about that next time. We'll rehash some of this stuff, but the other thing I think we just have to think on the morality piece is, I think it's just once again, it's a call to families of like, you have a job. You have to guard your mind, guard your heart, guard your family. What you need to be thinking about is not just what am I guarding my kids from, but am I being proactive in teaching them about the Lord? Right. So if you look at what the mandate is in Deuteronomy 6, it tells you that, especially in verse 6, these are the words that are giving you today are to be on your heart. Repeat them to your children. Talk about them when you sit in your house, when you walk around the road, when you lie down, when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand. Let them be a sign on your forehead. Write them as on the doorpost of your house, on your city gates. And so for us as parents, we need to be proactive and on the offensive of what am I going to teach my kids? What am I going to put for them? But we also need to recognize that there is a world out there that is meaning to tear them away from the faith. So one question I want to ask you about, though, because this comes up in this arena, and I know we're getting towards the end of this video for this first part. What do you say to people who say, well, look, what we don't want to do is full blown get rid of all TV, all of that, because what that's going to do is make your kids go crazy eventually. And they're going to just, freak out and go watch everything they can. Like, I've known people like this. I had friends I used to grow up with that were such strict missionaries that by the time they became 18, they went nuts. Now, part of that might be they were off a little bit as well, but there were certain things that they were just withheld and they were never allowed to. So there's one side that says, you can't do that. And I've heard people say, no, that's why we watch these movies with our kids. And when sex scenes come on, we try to teach them, and I've heard this, what do you think about that? Why, is this what the Lord wants? So where do you draw the line, do you think, where you say, okay, I don't want to be fully like, let's get rid of all things, but like, is there a place to be able to say, let's sit and watch this together and let me use these as teaching moments as well? What do you think?
Yeah, I would say, the vast majority of American Christians have taken the alternative of, let's open it up and we'll work through it. And how's that going? 80% loss. So I kind of fall with Vodi Bachman here that the kids actually that are more restrained and homeschooled even and protected from the world actually by majority hold to the faith better than the others. So if you want to do the odds, homeschooled, tightly controlled families have a much better success rate with their kids than the ones that made peace with the world. And just so we all know the preacher's kid or missionary's kid who went nuts. That does happen. I think that there's lots of reasons for that. I would say, again, Leviticus is pretty helpful. Don't look on the nakedness of another. So there's no business to watch a sex scene ever.
No.
And so I don't need to talk to my kids about that. What I need to do is figure out, why am I watching movies that have this in there? Because I already made peace with it, because maybe I was malformed as a child with my parents in the 80s or 90s and allowed to watch things that I shouldn't have watched. And so we got off the rails a while back. And now certain things, if you're watching TV and say you're watching Jeopardy and what comes on, actually, I didn't mean to bring that one up, but that might be a teachable moment because it's going to be, the kids are going to be confronted with something. And so we have to have some opportunity to talk about that. I mean, I remember being like 6 years old and seeing a man in drag, and it scared me. It was like, whoa, something's not right. The kids today, we're going to bring all our kids to the library and have that person read them, children's stories, and open them up to other disordered behavior, for lack of a better term. So no, I have to address those things. I think that if anything, we are erring on the side of being way too loose with our kids versus being overly careful. And my answer would be, look around. Are we retaining our own kids? What we're trying to do is not working, and peace with the culture has failed. So we've got to figure something out. And just restricting your kids and not educating them and drawing them into a deeper faith with Christ won't work. That I think is what really goes wrong in a lot of these things is we're not discipling our children. We're just putting them in a silo away from the world. That I think is the problem. We need to be discipling our children and at the same time protecting them from things that they're not ready for.
Yeah.
And part of the other thing is they should get married a lot younger and have the weight of responsibility on their backs, so they don't have time for the shenanigans. But that's a different conversation.
It's another one we can do another day. But I think if I'm hearing you right, I will say this. I think a lot of people who say, no, I use these as teachable moments, I would venture to say, are you there all the time doing it with them? Right. And I think that's the lazy answer. It's well thought. Now we good intention. But I don't think that we need to put, our kids in front of content that would stir them or ignite a passion or change them or anything like that. Like, we need to be mindful of, my job is first and foremost to teach them God's word and to disciple them. Now, if I give them entertainment, then I have to be very, very clear that this is not going to subvert what I'm trying to build with them already. So, so I think, unless you have something else you want to say, I think we have to be mindful that, I think Paul is, when he talks about the schemes of the devil, when he talks about our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against authorities, cosmic powers, darkness, against evil spiritual forces in the heavens. I think that's also includes the plan for our family that is found in the entertainment, in the culture. All that stuff is controlled. And we can do that another video too, about what the darkness that surrounds culture that we live in. And there's a real plan. When he says, when the scriptures talk about the devil goes around like a roaring lion looking who he can devour, like, that's not just meaning like, hey, you should just, try to be a better Christian. Like, it's like, there's a plan to rip you down. Yeah. Don't think that that's not at the forefront of all these companies that are there making content to begin to change your mind on things, to begin to desensitize you to things, to begin to change you think about all the commercials. It's all there from everything. I think there's a grand scheme for our culture to change us through just commercial watching, commercials and cartoons, just little things thrown in. And we've got to be very careful.
Yeah, I'll kind of just, my last thought is, Al Mohler was pointing this out in one of his lectures about the English word for boredom and where it came from. The old word was tedium, and that's what's in the Pilgrim's Progress. And Vanity Fair is characterized as a place where there is no cause for tedium, that there's always something to keep you engaged, entertainment nonstop. And it was viewed at that time as the most evil place on the planet. And we live in Vanity Fair, and we don't hear from God because we'll never let ourselves settle and have that bored moment where maybe the Spirit will work in our minds. We'll all be benefited by shutting the TV off, by having some quiet time, making the children read a book. Men, grab your wives, grab your kids, and do some discipleship. I mean, and I'm preaching to myself. What if we, instead of just taking stuff away, what if we replaced it with godly things? Paul, I'm talking Philippians 4 here, what things are noble and beautiful and those types of things. What we might find is, rather than fighting over, should I have Disney and should we watch the old Parent Trap or the new Parent Trap? What we could actually do is work through a catechism together, talk about some church figures in history, play mousetrap instead of watching the Parent Trap, and have a better time, because if you never get the mousetrap pieces together, I mean, that's like an engineering degree.
You don't even know how to play that game. Isn't it just about, letting the mouse get trapped? I don't even know how to actually play it. So,
I bought it recently. I still have the pieces. It's we'll see how long it lasts. It's great.
Well, hey man, we've got to close it here. I think this sets us up for part 2, which is finances. I think we need to talk more about the boycott, on what that would do, what that would mean, whether it was effective or not. But I do think, first and foremost, as we talk about this is bigger than a Disney. This is across the board. This is for you. And all of us need to recognize, am I okay with the content that I'm consuming? Am I okay? I think we as a culture are more concerned about what we eat. And you think about people, I don't put that in my body. You're talking about like fast food and fats and saturated fats and, what kind of chemicals. I think most American Christians, we're more concerned about what kind of things we're putting on ourselves. We'll care about the essential oils because we don't want to use certain soaps. But when it comes to what am I putting into my mind from the content that I read to what I watch, there's no filter there. And so we better get a filter, and we better think through that. And so before you start thinking through, the first step is, do I have a filter for myself? And then do I have one for my family? And is it a filter that will keep me focused and not distract me and not begin to put things in my mind that don't need to be there? So there's that. I think next one let's talk about, though, is, can I be a Christian and still go to Disneyland? Can I be a Christian and still have Disney Plus? And so there's a finance piece to that you need to ask, because a lot of people say, well, I don't want them to get my money because and am I wrong to still, if I'm filtering, but I've still got the service, what does that mean? Right. So we can talk more about that next time.
I'm paying for them to make these new movies through the service, where maybe I should go buy some old DVDs, but the convenience, again, we're killed by convenience. It's going to inconvenience us. It really will. And if you've ever had a DVD in kids, it doesn't last very long, so right. Those are the kind of things that it is so nice to just pop it up on Amazon or pop it up on Disney Plus. But yeah, I think it's kind of, Lord, it was hard, is that what you're going to tell him on Judgment Day when he says, why did you betray the children of your youth?
Too hard.
All right. You want to close this out?
Hey man, let's close out, and let's do the prayer that we always do. And so as you try to make this decision, I think all of us need prayer on this. So how do we do this? How do we sift through all of this? May the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord look with favor on you and give you peace. Hey, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Piece, Andrew, do we want to talk about real quick just what's coming to this channel?
Yeah, so we're looking to merge our podcasting together so that you can get the two of us and all of our devotions and theological sidebars.
Don't subscribe to Disney Plus. Subscribe to OTXNT.
That's right. That's right.
For no fee at all.
And hopefully that'll give you some more variety, and it'll help us to be more consistent on content. So look for that. We'll direct you in that way. In the meantime, share this video with someone, because this is a topic that people need to think through, and we've opened a door. We haven't solved the problem, but I think it's worth sharing.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, so be soon enough. Just be knowing that at some point, if you're watching this either on mine or Andrew's, or you're listening, that's going to change, and it's all merging to one central place. And so we'll give you more and more. We'll put links once that happens, but we're getting close. We're just inking out the deals and the contracts for how that happens and who gets more FaceTime and royalties at the end of all of that. So, but hey, thank you for watching. God bless, guys. And hey, it's hard, but keep at it. Keep thinking about how you do this, how you live this out in your home, and edify the Lord with what you watch and what you're doing. So take care.
God bless.
Thanks. See you, man. Bye.